Hello, this is Margaret Donor, and I'm joined today with my co-host Shelley Tatelbaum for another edition of the Healing Hour. We're so excited to be given the opportunity to present these ideas to everyone, and I want to remind you it's a call-in show. So as the show gets going, if you want to call in, it's 454-9500 and ask a question of either Shelley or myself. And we want to start today by giving some airtime to our sponsors. Our first sponsor is Partners in Massage, located at 4415 Albany Post Road, which is Route 9 in Hyde Park near the Vanderbilt Mansion, 229-9133, for all kinds of healing work and massage therapy, from medical to relaxation to reflexology, hot stone massage, craniosacral therapy, and we also have the Theralaze cold laser. So if you are suffering from an injury or you're just looking to relax, call Partners in Massage at 229-9133. And Shelley has a couple of sponsors she'd like to speak of as well before we get going.
I do, and once again, I just want to give the number to call in. It's 471-9500. 471-9500. So I'm delighted to have a good friend and a new sponsor to our show is William G. Miller and Son Funeral Home. And this is a family-owned, and operated business, and it's located at 371 Hooker Avenue in Poughkeepsie. Miller Funeral Home brings 3 generations of personal service to every funeral arrangement. The Miller family is just that, a family, like yours, and they experience grief just like you. They take their responsibility very seriously and share that commitment with no other family or funeral home. Vincent Miller personally oversees all arrangements and continues the Miller family tradition, started by his grandfather, actually, in 1932. So rest assured, you'll have the Miller Funeral Home commitment before, during, and after the funeral. That's the Miller Family Guarantee. So please call if you have any questions. The number there is 845-485-0241. Repeat, 845-485-0241, or you can visit their webpage at www.williamwm, spelled WMGMillerFuneralHome.com. So I can personally attest to Miller Funeral Home. They have done so much for grief in our community for so many years. I'd like to also give a shout out to the New York State Solar Farm, making solar affordable for every homeowner. Save from day one with their new solar energy lease program with no money out of pocket and savings from day one. And we just had this man running for Congress who was talking about solar, so here's a great solar company. You can request a free iQuote today and get it tomorrow by visiting www.nyssf.com or call their solar professionals at 877-SOLAR-95. And also Basic Glass Corporation, a commercial architectural glass company that supplies and installs all of your commercial needs, from aluminum storefronts, aluminum doors, and skylights. And for more information, you can visit them at www.basicglass.com. So once again, thank you for our sponsors for having faith in us for this community reach out program, the Healing Hour, that Margaret and I so delightedly love to present to you.
So today, as I had mentioned, or sort of tickled your imagination in the opening when John was talking, Shelley and I want to discuss an idea, a new idea for many people. I've heard Shelley talk about this idea of stalking your inner shadow, your inner issues. And I've often asked her, what does that mean to stalk, and where does that term come from? She brought in a little jaguar today because she said it comes from the idea of how a jaguar stalks its prey, but in this case, it's a way that you, I guess, as a, I think I would say, even might be fair to say, almost a meditation technique, as a meditator, our self-healing technique, you're going after or stalking your own inner demons, maybe your own issues. So I'm going to turn this over to Shelley to just explain to all of us where this stalking term comes from and what it means. So Shelley, take it away.
Well, the one thing about Don Miguel Ruiz, who this term is coming from in terms of the Toltec work of the 5 agreements that we talked about last week, he hooks our attention by using words. So stalking is going to catch your attention, right, Margaret? That word's going to catch you.
It definitely catches people's attention.
Right. And so he's using it as a great wake-up call for you to be able to understand that we have a great technique that will help us go in and look at the prey that's kind of really terrorizing us. And it's those stories and it's the beliefs, but it's really more about the reaction. So how it works is like this. So let's say that I'm in a conversation with somebody and they say something and I take it very personally and I have a big reaction. Well, I have a big reaction because somebody hit a wound of mine. If I didn't have that wound, then you could say that and it would just roll right off of me. It wouldn't bother me.
Right. That idea that everything doesn't affect everyone in the same way. It's very personal, really.
Well, it's personal because it hits your personal wound.
Right, exactly. Somebody else might just go, "That I don't see why you're so bothered by that."
Exactly. So then it's our responsibility, which from my point of view means our ability to respond.
Okay.
To look in and see, what is this reaction that I just had? What just hooked my attention? I'm going to go in and stalk this.
I think that's a nice sensual word too. It makes it not so scary.
Well, for some it could be pretty scary. It depends on your experience.
It's like I'm just going to stalk it, but it makes it feel like an organic thing, going in and looking and searching.
And not only that, but you're doing the stalking.
Right, so you're not being stalked. You are in control of it.
That's right. So the reaction is that controlling you. Right. Now you're going to stalk the reaction. So now you're taking back your power to say, what is this? What is going on? And the key question here is, when was the first time I ever had this feeling?
That's an interesting idea.
Okay? Because then you kind of cut through the different stories of, when did I first have this feeling? So, for example, if abandonment would be an issue perhaps that I might have had when I was growing up because my father and sister died when I was 8. So if I have this abandonment story going on, and then you fast forward 20 or 30 years later, and in my relationship with other people, I have an argument with somebody and they walk away from me, I might get a big reaction because it's reminding me of that I have an abandonment feeling. And then I say to myself, okay, so what is this feeling? And if I stalk it, I'll go back to the original story of, oh, wow, this feels exactly like it felt when my father and sister died, that they just kind of walked out of my lives.
Do you, when you generally stalk something, let's say, something's upset you or bothering you, there's an issue that seems to be bubbling to the surface, do you do it, go into your room and have a quiet room, close your eyes, and do it as a meditation almost, that you begin to journey within yourself? It seems to me like some people wouldn't even know how to begin.
Thanks for bringing that up. That's a great question. The answer to that is yes.
Okay.
You would definitely, once you have the reaction, then you would go to a quiet place, take some deep breaths, and just kind of relax your body and allow yourself to bring forward that feeling that you had. You reproduce it.
So you go into the feeling. Okay.
It's always about going into the feeling.
Right.
It's about the quality of sensation in your body.
Right.
Because that's where the truth lives. That's where the gold is. And so you reproduce that feeling of, okay, what did that feel like? What does that feeling remind me of? When was the first time I had that? And then the story will unfold. When you ask the question, you will get the answer.
Right. Yep. And then you look at that, and what do you do with it? Let's say we can use your example. Let's say you realize, oh my gosh, so-and-so just left the room and I took it so hard. Why was I doing that? Oh my gosh, it's the old abandonment feelings I have as a child when my, parent died. So you go, now what do I do about that? How do I hold that?
So what happens here is once you get the story, oh, okay, so this reminds me of the exact feeling I had when my father and sister died. Okay, so I was 8 when that happened, and now maybe I'm 50 years old.
Right.
Okay, so I'm not that powerless 8-year-old. Right. Now I'm the 50-year-old looking at it from the 50-year-old point of view.
Right.
And that shifts it immediately. Mm-hmm. Because now you're in the present moment rather than just in the past.
Right. You're not just feeling it.
That's right. And then we'll use another Toltec term, which is recapitulation.
Can you explain really quickly what Toltec is?
Sure. Don Miguel Ruiz, who wrote the 5 agreements and the 4 agreements, comes from a lineage called the Eagle Knight lineage of the Toltec community. Many of us now are aware of the Mayan community because of the end of the Mayan calendar. And so the Mayan and Toltecs lived around the same time.
Okay.
And so he comes from the Toltec lineage. And so his teachings, which I have studied and learned from him, come from Toltec. Actually, the word Toltec means artist.
Oh, okay.
And it means that you are the artist of your life.
Okay.
That you could have had so many events happen in your past, but you are now the artist. You now can have a clean canvas and create the life that you want to live. You are now the artist.
Oh, okay. That's wonderful. Thank you. I thought that people might need to know that.
And that's important, especially for the grieving population that I'm working for, to know that there are lots of events that have happened in your life, lots of trauma and crises that happen. But as we had talked about last week, I believe it was, we had talked about the different points of view, that we have different points of view coming from our programs that come from our own life experiences.
Right.
And they're all different.
Right. So as we begin to know ourselves better and we start to become more in control of our reactions and who we are, some of the techniques are what we talked about, the 5 agreements. And then this is really just an additional technique.
That's correct.
To helping you not to take things personally, be impeccable with your word. And
don't make assumptions.
Don't make assumptions. And really to be
skeptical.
Yeah, and to be in control to some degree, not as a control freak, but to have a self-awareness that allows you to be in control of how you react to what arises in your emotional body, I would say.
That's true. I'm a big one on words. You know that, right, Margaret?
Right.
Words hold power. And so instead of taking control, the word I prefer to use would be empowered.
Okay.
Then I become empowered to do something about this. I'm no longer powerless to my reaction.
Right, yeah. So now this technique is another technique for empowerment, to stalk your, really
your
looking
shadow.
Through your shadow. Right, and looking into your past. You brought up something that in my training has been primarily, and we can certainly talk about that in another show, but it's been primarily through past life regression therapy techniques. And I was also taught the same way, which is to look at the body and ask, where is my body holding this? And to really feel in the body the reaction. But you don't need to go into past lives. You can go into this life and find the same thing. You'll have this body reaction. My heart flutters, my stomach gets sick. I'm always, I get a headache, I get a low backache, my knees get weak. You might find that going right through the body can give you the story as well, or the trigger event, right?
The story lies in the body, because the memory can distort the event, because when something happens when you're 8 years old, you're interpreting it from an 8-year-old point of view.
Right.
And if you don't stop and look at that, then even when you're 50, you will be living your life from an 8-year-old point of view in terms of that reaction. And
I suppose that's why they say most people are really, acting from the age of about 12 or 13. Most adults are actually emotionally still pre-adolescent even, because they haven't healed these wounds. They haven't, as you say, stalked them and resolved them.
I don't even think people understand that this is available to them, which is why this is the healing hour, why you and I are presenting other ways of looking at how to personally heal our wounds from the past.
Right. Well, I think the first thing that most people are going to do is, well, maybe it's a form of denial too, is medicate something away, is try to medicate it, either self-medicating with drugs or alcohol, prescription drugs, and also with other obsessive compulsive behaviors, things that take us away from our feelings or medicate our feelings. And ultimately, it's my belief, those disempower us because we become a slave to those behaviors or those medications. Whereas what you're talking about, as you say, empowers you because you will not be a slave to the feeling, nor will you be a slave to the thing that you're doing to avoid the feeling. So I've always said, open that closet door and look at what's behind so that you can be empowered once again and really, take back your life is really what we're talking about.
This is true. When we start doing this interior landscape work, we're going inside and we're going into a whole different world, people are very frightened. They really, they're afraid of it. They would rather, drink, drug, shop, do any of some of the addictive things that cover up truly feeling what needs to be transformed and healed. And when we begin this work, it's as if we're using a flashlight to clean a closet. But if you're continuously having reactions, then it's time to bring in the spotlight and now clean your closet with a spotlight. And then you see, oh, I left a little bit here in this corner. There's something else stuck in this corner. That's the shadow. That's the deep recesses of the shadow. So this stalking gives you the ability to be able to use a spotlight now instead of a flashlight in terms of doing this work. Some of us have some idea that something's going on, and we'll kind of go in and we'll touch a little bit. We'll move around a few hangers and clean out a few things, but we don't do the real heavy cleaning.
Right. And they say that the more light you carry and the more light is shined on something, the more shadow you reveal. And so if you keep your light dim, and there are many ways to do that, methods that we both just mentioned, you're in a gray light, right? And you don't see much. You don't see, and we all like that. That's why they keep discos and bars kind of dim. So all the wrinkles don't show. Yeah. So you can pick up somebody and not have to see their flaws. I understand that. Yeah. Everyone looks good in that dim light. But we're really talking about the difficulty, if you want to give it this kind of explanation of saying, okay, I'm going to stand naked in a full light, in a full length mirror here. And most people will want to run back to that half light.
That's right. How many people are really willing to do that? Yeah. And it's so important from my point of view that we just become so courageous, in our stalking, that we become so courageous in wanting to heal our wounds that create so much suffering. As I say over and over again, I can't do a thing about anybody's pain. Your pain is something that you feel, and nobody can stop the pain. But we can stop the suffering. And the suffering are the stories that we tell about the pain. And so, an event that happens, somebody dies, that's real, that happened. The way you interpret that, I'm a victim, life's bad to me, God hates me, I'm being punished, these are the stories that make us suffer. And these stories have to be stalked, and they need to be recapitulated from a different point of view so that you can experience freedom.
It really is a reprogramming to some degree, and there's nothing harder than reprogramming the self. It's just very, very difficult, but it can be done. They're certainly possible in these techniques. So if you don't mind, could you give an example? Okay, you say you would go into your room, say go into a quiet space, a bedroom or wherever you have in your home. No television.
No.
Turn off the phone.
Unplug.
Unplug
from the matrix.
Right. Unplug and turn off the lights. And you would say, now close your eyes and go into how you felt in your body. What did you feel when that event that just triggered you happened? And you said, go back to where it first arose? Where can you do it's almost a matching game of feeling, right? So you can look back and say, oh my gosh, I remember even in 6th grade when all the kids ran away from me and played ditch 'em. I had that horrible feeling. It was beyond even, it was beyond what it should have been. It made me feel terrified. And then you can remember another event. And as you begin to see them, I always feel like one of the things I do is I say, what is the worst fear that I have around it? What's the worst that can happen? So I'll think, okay, I'm really fearful here. I'm so afraid. What am I afraid of? What is the worst thing? And rather than censor it, and when I do this with people in past life therapy as well, but what is the worst thing? And usually it'll come out very dramatic. I'm going to die. The worst thing is I'm going to die, or the worst thing is that I'm going to be left alone and starve, or the worst thing. It's this huge dramatic story that's being awoken by the fact that all the kids ran away from you in 6th grade or whatever the event is. And you begin to really get into the heart of the story. So that is how I would, when you speak of stalking, that is how I would envision it. But perhaps you can help other people as well have a technique as well. They've turned off the lights in the bedroom. They've silenced it. What would you suggest they do next?
The breath, the breath, the breath.
Okay.
You need to breathe into the fear, the tension, because the story is going to produce a physical reaction in the body. That's what most of us are trying to avoid. And we're asking you to go into it.
Right.
And so if you take the image of, the jaguar, for example, who's stalking its prey, it's very quiet, isn't it?
Right, yes, of
very
course.
Very quiet,
right.
It's very still.
Or it'll get away.
Yeah, it's observing, isn't it? It
Right.
is so intensely observing
Right.
that it is still,
Right.
it is quiet, it is focused, it's in its breath, it's watching everything, and until it's ready to pounce and be able to get right into it and get the prey. And so the stalking is pretty similar. We're sitting in our chair, we're breathing, we're focused, we're very still, and we're using our breath. And until we identify the target of our suffering.
Okay.
And then we go in. And going in means re-experiencing the pain so that it can be released.
Okay.
And let me tell you, I've been doing this process for over 12 years now, and at times it's extraordinarily uncomfortable. Extraordinary.
Yeah.
But it's your willingness to stay with it. Let me just keep breathing. It's almost like, the opposite in terms of childbirth. You need to have that breath to give birth to something, to, get through the pain. You need that breath work. And this is the same notion in terms of using the breath to help you through the pain of releasing this suffering that you've been holding in your body for how many years you've been holding it. And then when you've re-experience the pain, and there's a lot of crying involved. I mean, there's a lot of emotion. You're re-experiencing something, and you're moving that energy by crying or feeling the energy move through your body, feeling your stomach hurt or your head hurt, and you're just going with it. Okay, the pain's in my head, so let me breathe into my head. Let me keep breathing, and you keep moving the energy until you have emptied it. And it's you're silent, and it's like, okay, so now what? Well, how do I want to recapitulate this from the point of view of now? I'm no longer at the mercy of whatever that was that brought me the trauma and the story. So now, what is the lesson? How do I want to recapitulate this into my life so I can use it for something that's helpful rather than something that's destructive? And that makes you the artist. There you are. Now you become the artist. You become empowered to reinterpret it from a new point of view.
Right. Okay. No, so now we're speeding through this process, I know, but now we're at the point where we've cried or we've released, we've understood, and now what you're saying is we're at what I call the reprogramming. You call the beginning on a blank canvas, starting. Well, we're never completely a blank canvas, but starting to think. Okay, so I would think that the next thing I would do is I would go back to why, the reason I'm sitting in that room, like what just happened immediately in my life that triggered it. And I think about perhaps different ways I could have responded, or different programs. How would you do it?
No. I wouldn't do that, because then what you're doing is you're going into the would have been, should have been, could have been, and it's all in the past.
Okay.
We're looking at this from the point of view of the present moment now.
Okay.
How can I reinterpret this from the point of view of now? Because it doesn't matter how I could have responded or what could I have done.
Okay.
You're still kind of holding on to that energy. What we're trying to do is release the energy.
Right.
So it's more, how can I use this information to move forward so I don't get hooked again?
Right.
You see, you don't keep going back on what coulda, shoulda, woulda. It's what can
Right.
I do with this information? I've released this story now.
Right.
How can I manifest my life now from a different point of view, so that when somebody walks away from me or dumps me in a dump game, kind of, I'm interpreting that I don't get hooked anymore. I kind of laugh and say, oh, okay, I know where that story comes from. I know where that reaction comes from. I've already been in it.
Right.
I've already gone through the suffering of recapitulating that and going through that. So now I can kind of laugh and
Right.
kind of walk away
Right.
and have a sense of humor about it, perhaps.
I guess what I was thinking is that in my mind, I might go back to that original event. Like you say, that in this case, it's an abandonment story we're doing. And I go, wow, I can imagine myself now and my response being to laugh, or my response being to, shrug my shoulders and walk away. And so then for me, I was thinking, well, then I can actually imagine or see myself in the event in the future as a future, but having already, in a sense, in my mind, played out a alternative reaction, and to see how it fits and how it feels. So I guess I wasn't really saying going back so much as imagining, okay, if this happens to me in the future, how am I going to react?
I'm so glad you said this. This is great. This is great, because you're onto something.
Okay.
Okay? The imagining and what Don Miguel would call the dreaming accent, part of it, that you're dreaming having a different kind of reaction.
Right.
Instead of going back to that reaction,
Okay.
what would happen if you dreamt it forward?
Right.
And you said, okay, now I see where the woundedness is. Now I understand what my interpretation was and how that made me suffer. Let me dream a situation forward about another person that I'm presently involved with in the now.
Okay.
And what if that person does this to me? And let me feel what it feels like while I'm dreaming, to kind of just laugh it off.
Right.
So that when that event happens in the future,
Right.
you've already dreamt it or imagined it.
Right.
You see? So
Yep.
instead of the going back to that one, the alternative to that would be to dream it forward.
Right. Yep.
Does that make sense?
Yes, absolutely. I think to some degree that's what I was saying, is like, imagine if this comes up, some kind of similar situation, I can imagine myself reacting in a different way and not going back to the old wounding. And then what is that one of the always do the best, always do your best.
Right.
So if we go to the fourth agreement, right, which is always do your best, then we can also know that if in the future we don't react as we dreamed and we slip back a little, we can let ourselves off the hook by saying, I did my best and I'm just going to go forward again and try to do even better, or my best. And it's not something that will happen instantly, I guess is what I'm saying.
Excuse me. The Hudson Valley allergy system here is, excuse me.
I know everybody's allergies.
Yeah. Yesterday I had somebody in my office, actually, and she's been doing this work for some time. And she came in, she was really down on herself, because I know I've done this, I've stalked this, and here I went again, and I had a reaction once again, and I'm so upset with myself. And I said, well, how did it make you feel to do it again? She said, it made me feel actually worse, because I felt it more this time as I was doing it. And so my point of view is, there's a lesson here. What happens is, when we start cleaning out that closet, the integrity of our body starts to rise. No longer will it be willing to keep abusing itself with the same stories over and over again.
Okay.
And when you do it enough, and you do fall back, and you do lose your awareness, or you do go back into a reaction, you feel it even more. So the question becomes, okay, how, now that I'm feeling it even more because I'm allowing myself to feel,
Right.
how willing am I to keep abusing myself like this? You know?
Right.
So you start to say, you know what, this is a no-brainer. Every time I do this, it hurts me more and more because now I'm really feeling it. I'm not, numbing it out by drugs, alcohol, buying
Clothes,
whatever we do.
eating, whatever,
whatever it is that we do to cover pain. Now I'm really allowing myself to feel the pain, and I see and I feel what I'm doing to myself, and I am no longer willing to do that. Mm-hmm. So the falling back is great because it also shows us the abuse that we're doing to ourselves by this story, and it actually motivates us more to become more aware and not keep doing it in the future. So we use this also as a lesson rather than a judgment day. Oh my God, what's the matter with me? I know this. How come I'm not doing this? I've already did my recapitulation. I already did this. Why am I having this still? Well, sometimes we fall out of our awareness, and it's a good lesson.
Right. And it's interesting. I think it ties in a little bit to the idea that the more you're saying the integrity, I might say, I don't know if you said the vibration, but I might put it in those words, the vibration of your being increases as you do this work. You become more conscious, more awake, and more aware. And as that happens, then you also, there's a certain level that, well, you might say, if somebody does something and they're unconscious while they're doing it, then you say, well, they haven't learned that yet. They haven't. A little child, let's just say, a 3-year-old comes up to somebody, and she punches her friend in the head and takes the toy, my toy, and you say, well, there's a 3-year-old who hasn't learned that you just don't punch people in the head and take their toys from them, right?
Right.
So you have a certain level of forgiveness for the 3-year-old. You teach them. But let's say now it's a 13-year-old, and the 13-year-old or the 33-year-old comes up to somebody, punches them in the head, and steals their toys. You have a different sense. You say that person has an awareness and a consciousness that is a wrong act. It is not something that they should be doing, and yet they do it anyway. As a result of that, our judgment of the person also shifts. And I think to some degree you're saying that that's true with ourselves as well. When we're unconscious, when we haven't stalked the issue yet, we don't know it, we don't understand it, we forgive ourselves more easily. We say, oh, I'm like the 3-year-old. I just didn't get it yet. I just thought, that's the way it is. You go punch the kid and get the toy, you want it. But once you're 33 and you find yourself punching the people in the head and stealing their toy, you're much harder on yourself. So with this awakening comes a level of self-responsibility. But simultaneously, you're saying you have to know sometimes, whoever, for whatever reason, you might slip back to being that 3-year-old. And, in that case, if you're too harsh on yourself, you will not heal it. You'll fall into depression and self-recrimination.
It's the opposite, because what you're doing is you're giving food to the predator. And you're giving food to go against yourself even more. When you reveal aspects of yourself that are uncomfortable, then if you allow the judge to come in, then you have more food for that judge to go against you. It's more evidence for the judge to condemn you.
Oh, yeah, right. You could say, if you use it against yourself, right. Absolutely. Yeah.
And so one of the main tenets of the Toltec mythology, the 5 agreements, is that when you're revealing yourself to yourself and you're doing this inner work, there can be no judge. And in addition to that, forgiveness has to be there, because that's what is being called for. These stories want redemption.
Absolutely.
They so want redemption. They don't want judgment. It will only feed the fire.
Right, because the judgment is the reason we suppress and medicate, because we're judging ourselves.
And so that's one of the reasons it's very important for us to be completely compassionate, that we are in the human condition, we are human, we're going through a human experience, and when we fall into unawareness and unconsciousness, that part of us has to be there to say, oh, honey, I'm so sorry you fell into that again. I'm so sorry that hurts. Right. It's okay. It's okay. You're doing the best you can.
Right. So loving ourselves to heal ourselves and not judging ourselves is
Completely.
absolutely important. Yeah.
Key.
So we're going to take just a little break here and give you a little music.
And the number to call in is 471-9500.
No,
for the call.
454. Oh, no. I gave you the wrong number. Oops, guys.
Yeah.
471-9500. 471-9500. We'll take a little break and we'll be back soon.
Right.
So we're back, and we wanted to...
We've just had a good laugh.
We just had a good laugh because the Supremes were talking about nothing but heartache.
How appropriate.
How appropriate. And how she couldn't break away from his love. And it's a beautiful intro to thinking about freedom and how we can get ourselves free and not be enslaved by other people and ourselves. And that's a perfect example of how these obsessions get a hold of us. And we're talking about doing what we're calling shadow work. We're talking about doing the work that is really the work most people try to avoid. And before we go into that again, I want to just mention a couple things. One is our sponsors, and the other is the phone number. It's 471-9500. I got it right, 471-9500. And our sponsors today are Partners in Massage at 4415 Albany Post Road in Hyde Park, 229-9133 for massage and healing of all types. And then Shelley has a couple of sponsors she'd like to introduce quickly too.
So once again, it's William G. Miller is sponsoring more of it today. William G. Miller and Son Funeral Home. Once again, this is a family-owned, operated business at 371 Hooker Avenue in Poughkeepsie. And the number there is 845-485-0241. And I would just like to say about the sponsor that William G. Miller and Sons Funeral Homes were actually the first ones when I started in this field as a grief therapist 24 years ago, when nobody knew there was such a thing as grief therapists, and I went knocking on all the doors of the funeral homes to kind of see if anybody wanted to, use me to help them with their the grieving families. William was the one. He was the one. Vinnie Miller was the one who said, absolutely, and he is so for this community, and he puts his heart and his love into what he does. And so I really would like to encourage and invite people who need these services to contact William G. Miller and Son Funeral Home. And the number once again is 845-485-0241. I guarantee it, you will get the most caring service there at a very delicate and traumatic time in your life.
Thank you. And then we have two other sponsors. One is the Solar Farms.
New York State Solar Farm.
What's the number to contact
them? And the number
them?
there is 877-SOLAR, SOLAR 95. And the other is Basic Glass Corporation. And they have more information at their website, www.basicglass.com.
So thank you to our sponsors. And so we're going to continue now to talk about what really is an issue that we're at a time right now. I think a lot of people feel that we're at a critical time in human history. I think we're at a point where our collective shadow is becoming extremely visible through our governments, our educational systems, our healthcare systems, our banking and corporate systems. We're really at this point where from my point of view, the individual shadow, the shadows within all of us are rising to the surface, and as a result, the shadows that we have created around us in the macrocosm, we're the microcosm, are also becoming very evident. So it seems to some extent that someone might say, what does it really matter that I do this work? But they'll go and they'll be all focused and angry at the macrocosm. They'll be angry. And I'm not saying there isn't reason to be angry and upset at injustice. I'm certainly not saying that. I'm understanding clearly that injustice is a part of the world and needs to be looked at and addressed, just as it needs to be in our own self. But at this point, what Shelley and I are really talking about is understanding that if we clear our own issues, if we clear our own shadows and our own problems, that it's another way to assist actually the macrocosm, because it starts with us. It starts with us. And how can we, some people will say, oh, just arrest all the bad guys. Get rid of all the bad guys, arrest all the bad guys, and life will be fine. But if we haven't cleared out our own shadow, then we haven't changed a thing as far as I'm concerned. So the work we're talking about today is, if you really, really want to see the world outside of you be a better place, you have to start with the world inside of you. And that's hard work. And
well, we're going to use the word challenging.
Yeah, that's challenging. She won't let me say it's hard work.
I won't let you say hard.
It's challenging work. And I agree with her. It's challenging. I just fall into those old patterns.
But you see, that's how easy it is.
It is that easy. Yep. You say, oh, it's hard. But it is very challenging work. And so today we're giving all of you techniques to begin to clear personal, issues and shadows, and hopefully carry within you a light, and be able to shine that light perhaps on the macrocosm, but to be able to do that from a place of real personal integrity. And so we are talking about stalking technique, the Toltec technique, for getting to the heart of our trigger points and our issues. So one of the things we talked about was how our bodies hold memories. And it's my belief is that, I work with the body as a massage therapist and a healer. One of the things that I've found is that these issues are very chronic, and that it's so interesting that you'll be fine walking through your day, bum, 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 bum. Something will come up. Somebody will can just even be a word. It's amazing how small it can be. Someone will just say a word to us or have some conversation with us, and we'll walk away, and all of a sudden we'll have a backache or a neck ache or a headache. Mm-hmm. And we will go, in our unconscious state, we'll be like, wow, where did that come from? I wonder where that came from. But when we stalk it, we realize, oh my gosh, that person said just those few words, but it triggered inside of me an actual physical reaction. And I think this is something a lot of people don't understand. And I think as a healer, I think it's really helpful for people to understand how dynamically connected the mental body, the emotional body, and the physical body are. So I don't know, Shelley, if you have some words to say about that with the stalking techniques or other Toltec techniques, but I think it's important that people understand how their physical body really is so strongly tied in.
Well, the mind-body connection is undeniably strong. And so when the mind is interpreting something, the readout is going to be in the body. So if somebody says something to you and you're going to interpret it as, how dare they say that, and blah, 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 and why are people always doing this to me, and you become a victim, and then your body has no choice but to read out tension, anxiety, a pain somewhere, wherever your weak point is or wherever the trigger point is in your own body. And so definitely, I do the mindfulness-based stress reduction program over at Vassar Brothers Medical Center, and this really teaches us, once again, techniques in terms of helping us with the how the mind is so powerful and how the mind-body connection is. So in any event, let me just refocus here. We had a little thing going on here in the studio. And so the mind and the body are so connected, and the way in which we're able to go in and be able to access the wisdom and access the stories and to access everything is to quiet the mind, because the mind speaks in a roar and the heart speaks in a whisper. And in order to hear the wisdom and the intuition of the heart, we must quiet our minds. And so once you get the story of what your woundedness is, then you drop the story and you go into the sensation in your body that it produces. And then you just sit and breathe with the energy, or as you say, the vibration of that which is inside of your body, and go into what happens is then automatically the body will resurrect the original woundedness for you to see and breathe into and feel and experience, so that you can release that energy. Then, fast forward, that same situation happens again. The next time, there will be nothing to hook onto it. The energy will not be there to be hooked into anymore. You've cleaned it. You've
Right.
released it. You've redeemed it.
Right. I mean, that's something that's a whole nother topic, but it's something I've definitely seen as a healer with bodies. That really, this idea of energy hook is absolutely amazing how that is. Something literally hooks into the energetic body and then reproduces that vibration into the physical body. Over lifetimes, or a lifetime, if we just work with one lifetime, over a lifetime, it will mold your body. It will literally shape your body, so that if you were a child, and you were told that to be in shame of the self, or whatever, you'll often find that as that story reproduces itself, a certain body armor will emerge. People will round their shoulders forward. They will create a lot of tension in their upper back and shoulders. They'll want to almost shrink and disappear. So the physical body, I've noticed as a massage therapist and a body worker, you can see how the body is patterning itself literally from the mental programming that
Correct.
it's been receiving.
Mm-hmm.
And so sometimes you can go and massage, but if the mental program isn't being changed, the body won't change. It has to be
That's exactly
both,
right. Right.
So a massage is great. It'll keep you loose and so forth. But if the person doesn't really get to the heart or the root of the issue, very often it'll be a change for a week or two. But there won't be any long-term change, because the mind is unconsciously reprogramming the body.
You're not getting at the root.
Right, you're just getting to the symptom, which is the body.
That's right.
So these
You're
techniques...
not going to the cause, you're only going to the effect.
Right, these techniques are helpful to begin to awaken people into a deeper awareness so that they can take charge of their mind, body, spirit. Is that okay to say take charge, or you don't like that word probably?
No, actually I don't have a problem with it.
Oh, good.
I prefer empower,
Okay.
because take charge almost feels like ego.
Yeah.
It to me, words create a sensation in my body, and when I hear that word, it doesn't feel as good in my body as it empowers me then to do something.
Right, okay.
Taking charge is almost like the ego saying, "Okay, I'm in control now.
Okay.
Here I am."
Okay.
That feels more ego based.
Right.
And what you're speaking to is so clearly important. As a body worker, you take care of the effect, but we are personally responsible for taking care of the cause.
Right.
And we humans don't like to feel pain.
Right.
And yet, it's paradoxical in the sense that we don't like to feel it. We hide it, we run from it, we do anything to cover it, and then it continues on and on again. And so instead of it having this life of its own, because you're not willing to take responsibility for it, you're actually continuing the suffering, rather than going in and stalking once and for all, having the intense experience of the release, and then be done with it, basically.
And, maybe this is actually kind of a nice provocative thing to add at the end of the show, but as I said, my training as a past life therapist very much dealt with body. And what I found and what I was taught and what I've learned and what I've experienced, I've been doing that work for a long time, over 15, 16 years. And what I've found is that, and what we've found in past life, is it's not even just one life. That actually these injuries, we go and stalk all the way back, and we'll find, and this fascinates so many people, because they're so amazed, like, well, I could see how you could carry certain things through from past lives, but how do you carry a physical injury through? And you can go all the way back and find that it happened in 1750, and here it is in 2012, and you're carrying the same thing that happened to you in 1750. So it's an amazingly important concept for people to be aware of. And the idea that you're carrying it from your childhood, the idea that you're carrying it perhaps from another life, maybe even, from your early adulthood, wherever it is that these issues, they don't just go away, they don't just dissolve, they're a part of you. And they can either work, I think, either work for you or they can work against you. And whether they work for you or against you, a lot of that has to do with whether or not you're aware, you're conscious of them. And that's really, I think, what we're talking about, is how to become more conscious and aware and awake as humans. Would you agree with that idea?
I do agree with that. And I completely know from experience in working in my office with grieving people that when you say the word past life, people automatically go into a reaction because they have their own stories about that. And I would like to just put it out there, and hopefully maybe someday you and I can actually do a program on the paranormal aspects of grieving, which means the things that go around normal. It goes around what our belief system feels is real and true, because we come from a place of you have to see it to believe it, and there's so much that we can't see that is so real.
Right.
And past life regression is one of those pieces.
And then there's a few of us like myself that believes what we can't see is more real than what we can't see.
Well, that's a whole nother program.
That's down my alley.
Right, that's a whole nother program. But the point being is that even for those who may reject that notion or that concept, let's be responsible for this lifetime.
Right.
Let's be responsible for taking care of the woundedness that has occurred to you as a child. I have people in my office who had experienced trauma even when they were 2 or 3 years old, because it was on a sensory level. It was even pre-language for some, that they knew that their parents were fighting and there was abuse and all of those kinds of things, and they felt that trauma, although they didn't have words for it. And so we don't have to have, these big stories about it that have words in it. It can be from the quality of sensation that gets resurrected through another experience.
I've even watched regressions in my training, and where I've seen people be regressed back to the womb and have memories of being in the womb and being able to know and understand and hear fighting between their parents in the womb. I mean, so this stuff it's fascinating, it's deep, and it really, like I said, I think we either use it to become more awake and aware and empowered, or it uses us. And I think, if we want to be in our mastery, we want to be empowered and not let it take over.
That's right. And the other point that I wanted to make is that in the population of grieving people that I work with, there's a great opportunity as well as a crisis going on in their lives.
Right.
And it takes being brought to your knees, to be broken wide open, in order for people to understand that there are other things going on here. Because when we're so broken, we become more open.
Right.
We are wanting so badly to be free of our suffering and our pain that we're so open to other modalities, that the skeptical mind, in terms of a naysayer mind, becomes put to the side because we're looking to be able to find that peace and that safety, to feel safe again.
Right, they'll say, I'll try anything.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And so it is that being broken wide open, and that we don't need a trauma or a crisis to do that for us. When we become more aware, then we are able to use our reactions that we have in our body to be able to bring us to that same place without the universe having to provide some catastrophe for us to wake up.
Right. And it's interesting that, we do say also, humans have many, many, many sayings that they pull out of their pockets. One of the sayings that all humans pull out of their pocket at one time or another probably is, if it doesn't kill me, it makes me stronger. And that's a common saying, which is sort of in some ways what you're saying, which is, here is this thing that might break me, but I'm not going to let it break me. I'm going to let it make me stronger. And that's, that's a really tough thing, but obviously a very empowering idea.
But that's what we call a choice point.
Okay.
That's at the place where you can, if you have some awareness, make a choice of, I am going to grow from this experience.
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to get the lessons from it, rather than why are bad things always happening to me, and why am I such a victim? Because that continues the victim story, and you have an opportunity now to be able to create another story. So there we go, being the artist,
Right.
Or the author of your life,
Right.
and being able to change the story into, how can I grow from this? What can I learn from this? How can I make lemonade out of lemons?
Right. How many times have you said, oh man, I really don't want to repeat this.
Mm-hmm.
I really don't want to repeat this. I don't want to go down this road again. All the sayings that humans have. I really don't want to have that happen to me again. And so what Shelley and I are suggesting today is, if you have found yourself saying those things, then realize that the cure, if that's the way you want to put it, the empowerment, the healing, is there, and it's there at your fingertips. And you know, you can get someone else to help you, but there's a lot you can do on your own. You can probably heal many of these issues just by being quiet and breathing and feeling
And being willing to ask the questions.
Right.
Being willing to be a good detective in
Right.
terms of what's going on here.
Right. So we hope that you have understood today that this healing process is about not feeling it and just sitting in it, and not feeling miserable all over again because indulging in it. But it's really about moving the energy, moving the vibration. And one of the things, as we end today, I want to say is that what I have found is that you move the vibration, you move an issue, you move the vibration, and you know, we're in a linear world, so I'm going to go ahead and say, and you go up. Although I don't think that's really what happens, but it's a way to think of it, conceive of it. So you go up, your vibration goes up. So there you are, and you're thinking for a while, oh, I got it all, I got it, I'm done. I'm done, the work is done. And then all of a sudden, something else comes up, right? And then you deal with it, and it raises your vibration even more. So all of this is a process, and it's an ongoing process. And it's the process of becoming integrated and awake and aware. And it's an exciting process. So I would say, feel excited about the process. Don't feel overwhelmed by it.
I agree with you in terms of making that interpretation. If I could leave a message with everybody as well, it would be that this curiosity can be very, very exciting. It's not going to take you down. It's actually going to help you rise up.
So we thank everybody for joining us on the Healing Hour, and we love you all, and we'll see you in a couple weeks.
Bye-bye.
Bye.